آزادی بیان،
言论自由，
free speech.
Can you tell us what the free software movement is?
Free software is software that respects your freedom. So it's free as in freedom, not as in price. We don't mean gratis software. We mean freedom-respecting software. With software, there are just two possibilities. Either the users control the program, or the program controls the users. In order for the users to control the program effectively, they need certain freedoms. So if the software respects these essential freedoms, then it's free software, and the users control it. The users control it individually and collectively in parallel. Any group of people with similar desires for the software can have their version that they control. And any individual who mostly agrees with that group but disagrees on one point can change his version. So he can start with the group's version and then change it himself. One group could get the version from another group and then adapt it further. So the users in all conceivable ways have control over the copies that they use. But if the users don't control the program, then it's the program that controls the users, because it does what it does and the users are stuck with it. And who decides what it does? There is somebody who controls that program and through it exercises power over its users. So a non-free program generates a system of unjust power, and therefore non-free software is an evil. The freedoms that are essential for the users to control the program are 4 in number. Freedom 0 is the freedom to run the program as you wish. Freedom 1 is the freedom to study the source code and change it to make the program do your computing as you wish. Freedom 2 is the freedom to help others. That's the freedom to make exact copies and distribute them to others when you wish. And freedom 3 is the freedom to contribute to your community. That's the freedom to make copies of your modified versions, if you've made some, and distribute copies to others when you wish. These freedoms, to be adequate, must apply to all kinds of activities.
We have a principle that says we defend the internet and all other forms of communication against the encroachments of both public and private powers. What are your thoughts on this principle?
I agree completely, although it's so broad it might include things that are not clear to me from first hearing it. But if this means things such as censorship, I'm totally for that. I object to surveillance, whether it's done by companies or states. Really, I don't care which one it is, because it's intolerable either way. But what we find is that non-free software frequently is designed to do surveillance of the user. Why is this? With non-free software, somebody, the developer, controls the program and uses it as an instrument to exercise power over the users. Well, if that somebody is a greedy psychopath, such as a corporation, which by definition is a greedy psychopath, what will it do with this power? Whenever it sees an opportunity to gain more money by mistreating the users, it will do so, and it will think that it's supposed to do so. It won't even hesitate. So what we find is that malicious features are common in proprietary software. Proprietary packages that are known to contain specific malicious features include Microsoft Windows, Mac OS X, iOS, which is the operating system used in the iThings, the Flash player, the Amazon Kindle, the PlayStation 3, and most cellular phones, even if they're not smartphones. There are 3 broad categories of malicious features that we know of. There are surveillance features, There are features to restrict the user, in other words, digital handcuffs or digital restrictions management, DRM. And there are backdoors. The programs, the features that allow someone to remotely install changes without your permission, those are backdoors. The feature that Amazon used to remotely delete thousands of books from Kindles, and the book they deleted was 1984. I couldn't make it up better than that. That was also a backdoor.
How does free software work with copyright?
Copyright is one of several methods used to make programs non-free. With copyright law, the developers can say it's legally forbidden to copy this or change this. They can even say it's forbidden to run it. Well, of course, if I release a program in the form of source code and I say everybody's welcome to copy this, run this, change this, redistribute this, even with changes, then it's free. But suppose a middleman gets that from me and makes some changes, and suppose he wants to distribute that to you as a proprietary program. If he could do that, then my free version would still exist, but most users would get my code without the freedom that I aim to give them, and that would be mostly defeat. So I developed a method of using copyright law to stop him from doing that. The method I use is called copyleft, because it can be thought of as taking copyright and flipping it over. Here's what I do. I say, you have the 4 freedoms. You're allowed to run this study and change it and distribute copies without or with modification. But there's a condition when you redistribute it. Anytime you distribute any work that contains any non-trivial piece of this work, you have permission only on the condition that this entire work you distribute be distributed under this same license, and that you provide the source code to the users, and a list of other such requirements, all making sure that he respects your freedom and passes along to you the same freedoms he got from me.
What do you think about Creative Commons?
Well, first of all, Creative Commons, I'll start over. There are 2 levels to discuss Creative Commons. First, the job it does, and second, its philosophy. The job it does is publish licenses. There are 6 main Creative Commons licenses. 2 of them are free licenses. Now, I believe that all works meant to use for doing practical jobs must be free. It's an injustice if they are not free. What are these works? Well, there's software, there are recipes, there are educational works such as textbooks, reference works such as dictionaries and encyclopedias, text fonts, and other things. These should all be free. Well, you shouldn't use those 2 Creative Commons licenses for software. Even Creative Commons says, don't use their licenses for software, use my license, the GNU General Public License. But what about textbooks, reference works, and so on? You can use those 2 free Creative Commons licenses, which are the attribution license and the attribution share alike license. Those are the 2 Creative Commons licenses that are free. There are 4 more Creative Commons licenses which are not free, and those are no good for educational material, reference material, anything else that people are meant to use to do something. But there are other kinds of works. For instance, there are works of opinion, such as this one, which I ask you to publish under the Creative Commons No Derivatives license. Now, that license is not a free license, but this isn't a work that you use to do a job. It's a work meant to convey what I think, a different kind of purpose for the work. So I don't believe that statements of opinion must be free. And likewise, there are artistic works that, again, I don't believe must be free. However, there is a certain freedom that people must have for every published work, and that's the freedom to share copies, the freedom to non-commercially redistribute exact copies. And all of the Creative Commons licenses give you that freedom. So they're all acceptable for statements of opinion, for scientific papers, for artistic and entertainment works. Now, I also think, though, that it's important for copyright to expire, at least on non-free works, in a reasonably short time. For instance, 10 years. Meanwhile, the other thing to be said about Creative Commons concerns the philosophy. Although Creative Commons says it was partly inspired by the free software movement, at the philosophical level, it is fundamentally different in that it does not say that there are freedoms that users deserve.
What are your thoughts on the way in which the internet has developed in terms of freedom?
It's going downhill very fast. We see numerous countries imposing censorship on the internet, including France, Italy, and Spain, and Denmark, and now Turkey. And I'm only listing the countries that claim to more or less respect human rights. Obviously, an out-and-out tyranny like China or Iran will censor the internet. It does lots of other things that are even nastier, so what would we expect? So in some sense, when they began censoring the internet, it wasn't a big deal. But what we need to realize is that no country is safe. The United States is advocating censorship now. The US Congress is considering the Internet Blacklist Bill right now. So no country is safe from the threat of censorship of the internet.
Can you tell me a little bit more about the bill?
They plan to do many different things to block access to sites that are administratively determined to be unacceptable. This is without a trial. And these include abolishing the domains, or at least making ISPs in the US not recognize those domains, cutting off payment through any kind of digital payment system to those organizations, requiring search engines.
As they did to WikiLeaks?
As they did to WikiLeaks, indeed. Requiring search engines not to mention them. There's more. Requiring advertising systems to refuse to work with them. I believe that we will find payment companies and advertising systems that they will move outside the US in order to escape from this. But punishment without trial is the latest thing in the internet. The Digital Economy Act in the UK is an example of punishment without trial.
How can we take control of the internet back?
Well, there are two levels at which you can resist. There is the direct level. Keep your wireless net without a password. If you are pressured to put on a password, then you have been conscripted as an enforcer of these tyrannical laws. Beyond that, what we need to do is reject their propaganda. Don't use the term piracy to describe sharing. Piracy is attacking ships, and it's very bad. But we shouldn't use a term for something so bad to talk about sharing, because sharing is good.
Considering how you feel about companies such as Facebook, what do you think about the role that such tools played in, for example, the Arab Spring?
Basically, it's an ill wind that blows nobody good. So Facebook does a bunch of nasty things. Surveillance to a tremendous extent. In fact, I'm working on trying to get a browser modified so that Facebook like buttons will not show up at all. Because if you see one, Facebook is doing surveillance on you through that page. Facebook knows that your IP address visited that page. Well, Facebook shouldn't be allowed to know that. And Facebook uses the users' faces in paid publicity for companies. Facebook does numerous totally nasty things and will never stop. So I'll never use it. On the other hand, even bad things sometimes have paradoxical good byproducts. I'm not going to criticize the Tunisian revolution or the unfinished Egyptian revolution for having made use of Facebook. But that doesn't mean Facebook is good.